Director with U.S. Term Limits. U.S. Term Limits is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization dedicated to term limits on Congress. And this morning we're proud to announce Mayor Glenn Jacobs as our state chair for the state of Tennessee. To give you a little background on the history of U.S. Term Limits, we were founded in 1992. And between the years of 1992 and 95, we were successful in helping 23 state legislatures pass legislation that term limited their own delegations to Congress. However, in 1995, one of those laws was challenged all the way to the Supreme Court. And in U.S. Term Limits versus Thornton, it was ruled that only a constitutional amendment applying across the board, no matter what the state, where they're from, could put term limits on Congress. And so all of those 23 state laws were tossed out, and we're at square one with the process. So therefore, U.S. Term Limits today pursues both means for pursuing an amendment to the Constitution for term limits on Congress. We have a resolution, or rather an amendment proposal that's filed in Congress that seeks to the same end, as well as through the states. Under Article 5 of the Constitution, the states can come together for the purpose of proposing an amendment to the Constitution on an agreed upon topic, in this case, term limits. And so we know that from the mayor's passion on the issue of term limits, he loves this issue, he's very passionate about it, he speaks like we do about this issue, that he's a great fit for the role of Tennessee State Chair, and it's an issue that 78% of Tennessee voters want. And so we're delighted to have Mayor Jacobs to be the state chair for the state of Tennessee for U.S. Term Limits. And so I'd like to hand it off to him.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Before I begin, I'd like to recognize Jenny Lingenfelter, who is here from Congressman Burchie's office. Thank you for being here, Jenny. This is a great honor for me to be the chairperson for such an important effort. I'm a big admirer of the fierce advocacy of U.S. Term Limits, and I'm excited to be working with them. America is divided as never before, but I think there's one thing that we all agree on, no matter our politics. Congress is broken, and there doesn't seem to be any way to fix it. Instead of citizen legislators who give up a few years of their life to serve their neighbors, too many people in Congress make it a career. They spend years enjoying the perks, accruing more power, and serving only special interests. The results are a mountain of debt, mismanagement, bureaucracy, and red tape. Despite all of this, because of the inherent advantages of incumbency, Congresspeople are reelected in droves year after year. And even though term limits enjoy overwhelming public support, we know that Congress is never going to term limit themselves. My good friend, Congressman Burchett, who is a signer to the Term Limits Pledge and a co-sponsor of term limits legislation, is a rare exception to that rule. So what are we supposed to do? Well, the U.S. Constitution provides a solution. Under Article 5, the states have the authority to convene a convention, a constitutional convention, to propose amendments to the Constitution. In other words, if Congress won't enact term limits legislatively, the states can impose them constitutionally. Thus far, 4 states have already passed legislation calling for a constitutional convention: Florida, Alabama, West Virginia, and Missouri. Our goal is to make Tennessee the next state to join this list. Fortunately, the good news is that we're already partway there. This past legislative session, the House passed Joint House Resolution 8, which calls for a constitutional convention. The next step is for the Senate to vote on that resolution next year. Once that's passed, Tennessee will become the 5th state out of the 34 necessary to call a constitutional convention. And state delegates, through its state delegates, can amend the Constitution to term limit Congress. So I'm extremely excited and look forward to working with U.S. term limits and other elected officials here in Tennessee over the next several months to build support for what I believe is crucial legislation. So thank you again, Aaron, and at this point we're happy to take questions.
What are the specific term limits that are proposed, say, in the amendment that's been
Sure.
put before Congress?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jesse, and that's something that actually be debated at this convention. The first step is for the convention to be called. I'd say 2/3 of the states, correct? So 34 of the state legislatures would pass a resolution saying, hey, and send that on to Congress. We're going to call a constitutional convention to discuss term limits on Congress. And that's where all that would be discussed. There wouldn't be necessarily a proposal going in other than this is the goal, is to discuss the term limits. And then, of course, once that comes out of that convention, it would go back to the state's ratification, ultimately becoming an amendment.
To kind of think that the Congress passed on the presidency back in the 40s, but they didn't do it to themselves.
Sure, yeah. and here in Knox County, of course, and many places around the nation, we have term limits, and at the state too, we have term limits on the governor, we have term limits here in Knox County. As you said, there's a constitutional amendment for the presidency, but there is none for Congress, so it seems like a natural step.
You think getting some fresh faces in there will get our country moving in a different direction?
I really do. Unfortunately, I think that when you go to Washington, D.C., it's almost palatable or palpable that you can feel it's disconnected from the rest of the country. It almost feels like there's this bubble. Mm-hmm. And it really does feel like the folks in Congress, because they spend so much time there, they are in an echo chamber. And I think the longer that they're there, the worse that echo chamber becomes. So when you have fresh faces and different perspectives, I think that would really help. And it would, when we look at where the real power is in Congress, of course, it's with committees, and being able to get new blood into Congress, new people on committees, that sort of thing, I think would really help the country. All right, is that it?
Have you talked to any other states to try to sway them yet to join there?
Well, that's actually the job of U.S. term limits. I'm confined here in Tennessee. Well, that's a great question. They are a national organization that is working across the country on this issue. Great. Well, hey, again, thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. Everybody have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you.
Appreciate you.